Thank you so much, Anna, and hello, everybody. Thank you, too, for staying indoors, or maybe you're lying in the garden. I think we've all been quite privileged, some of us, to have a garden, to have a little bit of outdoor space, and also to maybe not have to rush around so much as we were doing before. Clearly anxieties, and I hope you're all well. But for me, this has been really a period of reflection and resetting. A lot of the different stakeholders I work with, having conversations about how we can learn from this experience that we're all in right now to make the world a better place. So here's me, and some of you in Europe may recognize this chap on the right who I'm with. This is just a year ago when we were that close. We weren't 1.5 meters away. A year ago at the European Business Summit, and there is now Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Frans Timmermans, who I've been working with other NGOs and think tanks the last years to seed and conceive of the European Green Deal. Some of you may know what that's about. That's about essentially a green transformation of the European economy. And now he's in place. So 1 year later, here we are, all socially distanced. These events where 100 of us are getting together and chatting over coffee and meeting. Hopefully, as we've heard before, we'll do that next year. So see you all then. But the world of face-to-face discussions now happens on Zoom. So as much as we can't have a coffee, we can have the chat room afterwards. So do stay afterwards and have a chat. So let's have a look. We're going to change slides now. Now, I might be a little bit provocative here today. This, for me and for many people, represents the past. We're all running around trying to make as much money as we can. And increasingly over the last decades, the gap between the rich and poor has got wider. Although globally there's a massive new middle class and a lot more people are more wealthy and poverty has decreased. But this is kind of what the session, I'm just going to set the session up, which you probably have all seen on the program. But this is kind of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about for the next 10 minutes or so and for the next, and in discussion with you. So do put your questions in the chat. So even now, amidst so much uncertainty about the immediate future, people are debating new solutions that will emerge from this crisis. Global health, economic recovery, but also the way we work and how we treat the planet. And I don't know if you followed just the session previously on the main stage. There were some really interesting ideas that came out of that too, based on the kind of world that we're going to rebuild after this crisis. Well, if there is an after crisis moment, I think that's another question. But how will and how is this crisis shaping corporate communication, employee activism, and CSR? And what consequences could the crisis have for the way we tackle the climate crisis? And after all, we're all communicators. For me, communication in its widest sense also includes public affairs, it includes advocacy, all the digital communication, all of the classic PR. And my feeling is really that getting strong messages, getting clear, authentic messages, and communicating that and sharing that with your audiences is the way forward. So COVID-19 is actually, it provides a wake-up call to change the system. That may not sit very well with many of the audience, of many of you there, but the fact is that there are plenty of crises on the horizon. There have been on the work I've been doing the last 20 years on climate change, biodiversity loss, social injustice rising in many parts of the world. So the question, I guess, I'm going to ask a series of questions, and I guess this is a moment for reflection for all of us. What kind of world do we want? Were we happy with the world before? And can we build back better? So I hope I find my ideas thought-provoking, motivate you to ask questions today. And let's think about the society that we all want to create, because at the end of the day, corporations, agencies, wherever we work, however we make our living, we can all have a societal responsibility, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a head of a PR team and so forth. This is another way of looking at where we are now. This is a kind of ad, which I'm sorry, or a little cartoon taken from media, but I'm sorry it doesn't come up that well in terms of the resolution. But the point is clear that as climate change looms, promising more and more global disruptions, COVID-19 has acted as a kind of brutal foreshadowing. So if climate change is a slow-moving, a huge emergency that we can see on the horizon, coronavirus is a lightning fast one. It shows us the severe limitations of this globalized, growth-obsessed economy, begging us to change before it's too late, bringing in ideas that were mentioned in the main panel session about solidarity. We wouldn't have heard that word in the corporate lexicon a few years back. So we have the COVID-19 crisis that we're all grappling with now in different ways. But the recession down the road, and as I mentioned before, what kind of building back are we going to focus on? Is it going to be the same as before, or are we going to learn from the financial crisis of 2008 and actually build back in a different way? And of course, this huge wave of climate change that's on the horizon. So the question is, we need to address it now. This is what I would say. But at the same time as getting economy and business and society back on track, what kind of skills do we need? And this is where I've kind of, this is my mantra this was my mantra, but this is actually where I realized during this crisis, when it hit, I turned the news off after day 2 and only logged into WHO to get the facts. And I realized I'm actually pretty resilient, adaptable, and agile. And I think these are the some of the three skills that are going to be really important for all of you and all of us as we move forward in this new volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, complex world that is now actually a reality. So my total big business focus has been all about this. I mean, this is really simple. I mean, we're all going to have to be experts in design, experts on technology. It's a real leveler, this crisis. But what it's allowed me to do is to focus in a really, really honed, clear way about what my value is, what my role is. And so this is also the case for businesses, all large and small, redefining themselves based on their societal value. Some have done better than others. Some have used the opportunity or wanting to help communities, their workers. Oops, excuse me. Sorry, there's a storm in Brussels. My window flew open. So to be agile and dealing with the problem immediately. So this is what I'm doing now. I focused all of my work on cut-through campaigns because people are busy. Campaigns because it's all about a call to action, a change we want to make, as most communication today, I would argue, is about change, managing change, communicating change, bringing other people along with that change. And it's about an elevated impact. Like, how can we do what we do better all the time? Question ourselves, how can we do this differently and do it better? And the two big issues of the day are, I would say, climate and health. I mean, if we're not communicating about those two topics, and also community, clearly, bringing communities along, then we're not really where it's at. So this is how I've been spending my time in lockdown, as you just heard at the beginning. I kind of decided, okay, this is a moment for reflection. People are at home. We can actually gather together people from actually all over the place to have conversations. So I've organized a series of events under the hashtag #ThinkActChange. So if you want to follow future events, just check that on Twitter or LinkedIn. And here at the bottom, we have the co-founder of Burning Man, Harley, at the bottom here on the bottom right. We have Fuzi, a former refugee who's running a kind of under the radar support network in terms of tools and materials and ideas for organizations like Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for Future, and all of those similar organizations organizing activist moments online and offline, well, not so much offline now, but online now, around the world. And then we also have Harry here at the bottom right, who's the head of global affairs, corporate affairs for Signify, which is formerly Philips. So you imagine another time where we get people in the room from such diverse backgrounds discussing together and understanding actually that there's a lot we have in common. And I really think this is the moment to share ideas and to build new ways of collaboration. And this is just another thing. This builds upon what I do often, and I've stepped up during the quarantine period. events that I organize for NGOs and NGOs activists in Brussels, and also people from the institutions and journalists and others who are kind of more activist mindset. And we anyway organize these for the last 4 years, me and a partner, because it's always fun to do things together with one other, or at least another, to make it fun as well, and to share the load. We organize these events previously once a month to bring in an amazing speaker. And here we have Martina from the New York Times, and we call the events News and Booze. We don't have much booze now, but we do have news. We bring in great speakers to inspire and inform NGOs so that they can do their job better. So we stepped that up, and we had the first one in the first week, I think, of lockdown on the first Wednesday, which brought together 150 people. People are keen to be inspired because actually the lockdown is quite challenging in many ways, as you know. So this is just how I've been spending my time a little bit too, on developing messages, which I think are very meaningful. This is for this is the first ever European Mental Health Week. I mean, now that we're all in it together, we have to have messages of reassurance. And the reason I'm putting this on is not just about mental health. It's the way mental health, and this is going to be a bigger and bigger topic in the future, is going to affect the way companies work. We had the keyword solidarity in the first main stage again. You know, these emotional connections that we talk about now as we're on a level of well-being and care and compassion. You know, the way Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, has been running her communication and actually running an integrated strategy in terms of managing the crisis and communicating effectively in a way which is very caring, very compassionate, and very much on a level. So I'm showing you this because this is going to be a big area of really how we're going to operate together in the post-pandemic landscape. And indeed, this is going to last a long time. So mental health issues, employee engagement, how do we really bring everybody along and harness their creativity, their ideas, as well as their resources, their capacity to be able to move forward in different organizations as one. So that's a real challenge. And there's just a few messages here. But I was so happy to be asked to do this. We had some really about the together words. We can, it's empowering, it's about supporting. So these are very much the essence of actually the kind of communication that we would expect possibly today from many corporations. And there's the last one, together we can act. But moving to, of course, the post-pandemic landscape is how are we going to deal with this other massive issue, which we mentioned earlier, which is about climate change. And we don't really have that much time to deal with it. So, I mean, what is the post-pandemic landscape? What's it going to look like? I mean, we'll need more innovation. Just look at this slide next. I mean, this is about flattening the curve. Translated to the idea of sustainability, this is business as usual with massive risks. And when sustainability is a priority, we can manage things better. So these shock that we've all had, and we've had to adapt so quickly, and we've seen systemic disruption on a scale that we couldn't even imagine before. So what can we learn from this? I mean, very quickly we can learn about rapid innovation, that we need to share ideas, we need to think differently, we need to get different kinds of people together. We have to all get a bit adept with technology because we're our own autonomous leaders now in terms of how we can communicate, how we can get our messages across. Digital has to be embedded in everybody's mind now, and I'm totally not a tech person, but I've managed to organize events on Zoom right from the start, probably, and done tons of trainings for national health ministries, for the European Commission, and other clients, and other trainings, other workshops of senior management. This all happens and it's fun and it's doable on Zoom. I mean, I'm not promoting Zoom, but I'm just saying that, you know, it's a little bit like when the iPhone was invented. You know, before technology was really clunky, but now actually technology, we all have to just deal with it. And frankly, I would stress again and again that building, convening new kinds of relationships, collaborations in cross-sectional, you know, between departments, between sectors, that's where the action is. I mean, and then it's also a time of donuts, and I'll let you ponder on this a moment, and you can look it up. Donut economy is where the future is, looking at things in a more holistic way rather than just about GDP. what does the post-pandemic landscape look like? It looks like there's strings attached to bailouts, possibly. Let's hope we learned from 2008 that the investment, when it comes back into relaunching the economy, that it's done in a way which is more equitable, where people are more happy overall, where wealth is shared, and of course the climate and environment, nature, biodiversity are actually taken care of. And this, just very quickly before we have some questions, because I'd love to hear from you, are the few things that I've been doing or I think are important. So it's about the facts on the top here. On the top left, we have the importance of paying attention to this urgent, the global goals for the UN goals. It's about the frame in which we're all operating as communicators. These are the big issues of the day. It's about gender equity. It's about, and a little promo for my book here on the left, it's about engaging people, employees, suppliers, freelancers, contracted agents, and all of your network around. It's about engaging people through sustainability, through the issues they care about, and through their realization now that it's about community, it's about climate, and it's about being prepared for the future. So that means collaborating in new ways. As The Economist says, it's about seizing the time to address the climate change. And of course, it's about innovation, and it's about making sure that you follow where the investors are going, and that's towards sustainability. So on that note, I'll spread this positive energy today, and I'd love to hear your questions. Thank you.
We're waiting for the questions to come in. Jo, you spoke so much about people being keen to be inspired. And so where do we start as communicators? You know, how, in a sense, my question to me is, how can you, as a communicator, get inspired so that you can inspire others?
Well, the way I think to be inspired is to actually mostly be open-minded, to communicate with people, share ideas with people you don't normally engage with. I mean, I've noticed in my years and years of experience now and working for different sectors, seeing things from different perspectives, that people tend to kind of be a little bit tribal. You know, if you're in the big corporate world, then you kind of hang out with corporates. If you're the NGO world, you hang out with NGOs. And I'm really all for, I really feel like everybody's got a role to play. It's not about division. It's about getting people together and sharing ideas and figuring out that actually when we think about it in truth, we're all in this together. So why don't we reach out a bit and think about things in new ways, which will be more exciting, frankly, to help everything move forward. So getting together with other people, be inspired, read things you don't normally read.
So I remember yesterday when we were talking, you were saying that one of your most favorite things to do is breaking bubbles, right? And this is, to me, what you're saying, right? Speak to people who are not in your comfort zone. Speak to people who are not exactly operating in the area that you're operating with and familiar with. Look, there's Nicolas writes us a question for you, and he says, as a communicator, do you think that calling the next crisis climate change versus climate emergency or climate crisis would have an impact on understanding of the general public? What do you think? Does the name, does the nouns we associate this make a difference?
Yeah, you know, the lexicon is massively important. And there's been a whole campaign, I think, a couple of years ago by the Guardian newspaper UK, where they really chose to redefine and actively redefine climate change to climate crisis, climate emergency. In my world, we talk about emergency and crisis. And that world is UN, client agencies, senior people in the European institutions, senior management in global corporations, the progressive corporations, and also, of course, in the NGO world, where people are campaigning. Also, think tanks are starting to shift away from kind of old school, this is about change, and this is actually a crisis. But the thing is, it's hard now to talk about that crisis when we're in this crisis. And I think that's the challenge. But in a way, it's kind of understanding that this crisis is actually just preparing us for what's ahead. And if we don't really invest in preparedness, for the other crises, all of the challenges we've just faced in this crisis, right at the start, when we had lockdown, for the supply chain challenges, for employee engagement, they were all so, I mean, let's learn from that. Let's really learn from that and figure out how we take action in advance so we can avoid a kind of metaphor for we don't have enough face masks. When there's mass migration with climate, the crisis, let's avoid that now and take action now to avoid the worst.
So invest in preparedness. Use the time. That in a sense, this change of rhythm has brought us to think ahead. Before we let you go, there's one more question. There's Sarah writing, what position do you think corporations who have closed ranks and ring-fenced themselves to protect themselves during this crisis will be in post-pandemic? Will people remember and will they pay the price? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data out there from different organizations who've done research already to show that the brands that have been outspoken on community, on crisis, on compassion, and actually actively either switching to make PPE or engaging in their communities and in really a spirit of emergency, crisis, solidarity, and really helping people. Those brands, of course, will be remembered. And if we think already before the crisis, young people were very skeptical, the new generation, the under 30s or even under 35s, let's say. There's a whole new generation who are much more skeptical about brands. They want to see the values behind the brands. They want to see that companies have a societal purpose. What's the real value beyond making just about making money, about the pure commercial goals? And I think you're absolutely right. This is going to be a real game changer. It's going to shake up different sectors in really radical ways. So it's time to get with your bosses or your clients with some great ideas of how to build back better in a way which addresses resilience. It reassures people. And it kind of allows companies to press the reset button. Hey, this is actually what we stand for.
So look, one more, and that's just because I've eaten up so much of your time at the beginning. Carol is asking whether you have any tips on how an organization should, I would rather say Carol could, align the SDGs with the CSR program.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought, I've been working on sustainability or CSR issues, I suppose, for 20 plus years, even maybe before. I mean, I remember my first one of the presentations I did to the board of Philip Morris was about, hey, don't we need some programs with farmers? Don't we need to demonstrate our kind of investment in the community? That we just need to talk about the environment. And we call that sustainability outreach. And that's kind of interesting. That was 25 years ago. And then there have been policies in companies mostly focused on CSR. That's kind of the corporate lexicon for addressing actually the same side of the other coin, which is sustainability. Like the planet needs sustainability. Companies need to show they're responsible. So it's just a kind of different lens looking through the world. But certainly CSR programs to be really serious. They need to check that. I mean, corporate communication needs to go up the chain to business strategy and essentially make sure that the business strategy is aligned with the SDGs and focus on actively making progress rather than protecting business interests, but actually helping the world in key areas, whether that's gender equity, whether that's poverty reduction, whether that's reducing emissions, building in energy efficiency, kind of transforming. I mean, what role do companies play now in the transformation? I think those are the questions. I mean, there's questions that need to be asked when you're developing your CSR program. And I have to say, it has to be very clear that it's about change. It's not about defense.
So let's keep that, right? So you need to align this. You need to embed this in the business strategy. It's not an add-on anymore. CSR programs for a very, very long time have been, planting a bunch of trees and giving money that was there as a surplus because we could. One of the other things I would add to what you're saying, Joe, is that most of the time when people look at the SDGs, they look at the world and the universe. Whereas there's poverty, there's hunger, there's inequality right out your door. preferably in a sense right out your door rather than in your house. And maybe that's the best place to start. You know, how is it that within your community can you help reduce poverty? How is it that within your community can you reduce hunger? You know, come up with having a healthier, nicer, more balanced environment. Joe, it went really, really fast, didn't it?
I know.
We've just been here and it's already over. Thank you so very much for joining us, for starting with such inspiring ideas, our track. So break bubbles, start close, make sustainability and responsibility, embed them into your business strategy, and do speak up. At the top of the chat, you do have the meet the speaker. So if you do want to have a little chat with Joe, you can do it there. We have to move at a really, really fast pace. We have to move on. So Joe, thank you very, very much.